Hello, and welcome back for another episode of the Accessible Technology Podcast with me, Phoebes Lyle. This is a podcast that is all about how we can make everyday technology more accessible for disabled people, as well as getting into what the most accessible and least accessible technologies are for disabled people, which is something that I am really passionate about, given that I am paralysed from the neck down. The podcast is available to listen to on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and Spotify. However, if you'd like to support the podcast and the content I produce in other ways, you can also support it by going over to the Phoebes Now Buy Me a Coffee page, which is where you will also be able to find exclusive episodes that aren't part of the podcast, as well as checking out a shop that I plan to open at some stage. In this episode, I'm going to give you an audio tutorial on how you can set up a technology podcast using just your phone or a tablet, using a free podcast host like RedCircle. But I also just want to make clear as well that you don't just have to set up a technology podcast, because a podcast could be anything these days. My favourite ones to listen to in my spare time is to listen to ones on true crime, such as the UK True Crime Podcast, as well as Minds of Madness. But I also like a couple of cooking podcasts as well, depending on whether or not I want to find a couple of new recipes, such as the BBC Good Food Podcast. But as well, you can also use other hosts as well to start your podcast, not just RedCircle. And some of them do also offer free plans, although personally I don't feel like any of the other options out there have free plans that are nearly as good as RedCircle's, which is why I decided to go for it. But now that you know what this episode is going to be about, let's get straight into this audio tutorial. So first of all, what you will need to do will be to either sign up or log in, and after you log in, you'll be brought to this page. I already have a podcast here called the Faith Now Podcast, but I'm also going to want to add another one. So all you have to do that is to tap podcast. This will give you two options, which are to either create a new podcast or to import a podcast from another platform. But because this is a brand new podcast, I'm just going to tap create new. You'll be given the options to choose an image file. which I am going to do now. I'm just going to tap this first one I created earlier, and after I selected that, I'll just click add photo that might need to be a wee bit smaller later. So yeah, I'll import that later on. So the name I'm going to give my podcast is the Accessible Technology Podcast. In the description box, I will type in something like technology podcast all about what technology is accessible for disabled people, and that can be edited later on once it all is set up. So in my primary category, I will then type in technology. Yeah, I'm not going to do a secondary category. My contact email is then there, my offer name is there. So now all I have to do is hit create. But now that I've taught you how to set up a podcast using a site like RedCircle, tell me, have you created a podcast before? If you did, what type of podcast have you created? Are you having a good time creating your podcast? Or have you chosen a different host? And if you haven't set up a podcast yet but are thinking of setting one up, has this helped you move any further along? Well, if you would like to pass on any of your thoughts, you can include them in a review wherever you're listening to this podcast on, as well as via the contact pages over on my pltechreviews.co.uk site or on my other website, phoebelow.com. If you're interested in watching any of the other videos that I have uploaded on accessible technology before, you can find them by searching for PL Tech Reviews on YouTube, and please consider subscribing to it. But if you would also like to see a couple of my accessible television reviews, as well as my film, TV, theatre reviews, and political videos, you can find those by searching for Deep Cell Journalism on YouTube. And if you would like a video-free version of all of those as well for any reason, you can also follow my other podcast, the Phoebe's Loud Podcast, by searching for it on all of the same destinations as you can listen to this podcast on. But of course, there is also the Buy Me a Coffee page again. In the next episode, I'm going to start moving away from the audio tutorials for a wee bit so that I can include episodes of my reactions to tech, including the first one, which will be my reaction to Apple's 10th Gen iPad and 6th generation iPad Pro, which were announced on the 18th of October 2022. And after that, I'll be giving you an episode of the first time I tested a customized DSi. After that, I'll be giving you another episode of my reactions where I will be reacting to Apple's 14 and 16-inch M2 MacBook Pros. And after that, you'll be hearing my reaction to the second generation HomePod. I plan to update this podcast currently 3 times a week, but that might have to change when I hopefully get some more work opportunities. But I'll make time to stay as loyal to this podcast as possible, and hopefully I'll be able to update at least once a month or thereabouts. If you would like to support me via my socials, you can do so by searching for @HeapsNow on Twitter or by searching for the real HeapsNow on Instagram. And you can also follow my HeapsNow tech review site as well by searching for it on WordPress and clicking follow if you have a WordPress account, or by following this podcast or subscribing to the YouTube channel, which you can do with a free Google account. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye!